Running backs are the most dangerous asset in dynasty fantasy football. Should we be buying even the elites at their price? Can we afford it? When do we know when it's time to get in or get out? The dynasty landscape right now is in shambles. This podcast is powered by the Fantasy Points data suite. Dynasty Points is ready to dive into running backs right now.
What? What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
Yes, running backs. They are the touchiest topic in fantasy football. Lord knows we need them. We can't really win without them. And sometimes you don't need much, but it's nicer to have than have not, because we joke that running backs will be cheaper in season. They're not. Or they'll be cheaper in the off season. They never are. They're never cheap. Absolutely never cheap. We're going to set a few examples with this. Buck, you talked about a great one that I hadn't forgotten about in the Discord when you were saying that you couldn't jokingly buy ETN for 206, even though we've done nothing but been told he's a dead asset. People do not want to let go of running backs. So hear a lot about them all being sells, but if no one's selling, then is that really true? And because it's February, is it actually a good time to buy running backs? There's a ton of risk. There's contract issues. There's so many things that go into the most important position in fantasy football. If you have, you're in a great spot. If you don't, but nobody wants to pay, nobody wants to actually move on them the way their importance should show. So today, Ryan, Andy, this is what we are touching on, a super important position. What do we have going on today? Well, we have, should you even buy running backs in February? We're going to touch on that. Are all running backs a sell, like the internet will continuously tell you? Our hardest player to rank, because we are going to talk about our RB rankings. There was no Dynasty Points market report, so we're kind of combining them this week because we're all here anyway. We wanted to talk about running backs. We're going to talk about our ranks. We're going to talk about some disparities in our ranks. Who do we feel is not placed correctly, etc. And we're going to get out of here. We're going to answer a couple of questions. We're going to have a great time. Started a little late, had some technical stuff, but we're right back in. So let's dive right in. Ryan, you wrote your what you learned from 2024 article. You can read that at FantasyPoints.com. I'll drop that in the description after the program. It'll be in the podcast form if you're listening to this on the next day. Everything shows that we need running backs right now. So my question, as it is framed on the overlay here, is there a good time to buy? Really? Because it feels like it's always risky. Oh, and you're muted. Look at that.
Look at that. Technical issues to hold us back. I start the show muted. What am I doing today? This is just, it's been a rough night for me.
Welcome in, everybody.
Yeah. Good to see everybody. Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning the article, Tom, because, yeah, I'm probably going to reference it at a few different points tonight. Try not to rehash all of it. But, yeah, you guys want to go read that, absolutely go do so. Link in the description. It's my masterclass on the 2024 fantasy season. I think it's a must read before you do any sort of 2025 draft. So, yeah, go check that out. But to get to the question of the hour, which is, does it make sense to buy running backs right now in February? What it's important to understand is that right now, kind of any productive asset in Dynasty, it should theoretically be at its cheapest. And that's not just because Dynasty managers are dumb or they're obsessed with draft picks or with young players. It's also because there's a genuine information gap in February compared to in August, right?
Yeah.
We don't know how all of these backfields are going to shake out from where we're sitting here in February. Guys can sign in free agency and alter a guy's projection for the upcoming season. Teams can select running backs in the draft. We're working with very limited information here. But because of that, hopefully, some running backs will be discounted compared to what you're going to have to pay to acquire them in August or even in October, when you have the maximum amount of information, both about the running backs in the league and their projections and your own team, right? So yes, if you're buying running backs right now, there's kind of two ways to look at it. You can just play the information game, right? If you think you have an edge on the market in guessing how any of these situations are going to turn out based on a certain team's motivations, then yeah, then you can go out and make a trade based on that informational take that you might have. So a couple that I have right now, for example, I think that there's a lower chance than the dynasty market does that the Giants are going to draft a running back on day one or day two. I think they have a lot of other needs. I think they got a decent amount of production out of Tyrone Tracy and the combination of Devin Singletary last year. Yet Tyrone Tracy down in round 8 at RB20. We talk about year 2 running back breakouts all the time. That's not really being priced in for Tracy right now. And it's because the market is fearful that this is a day 3 running back with likely little job security. You would expect the team to bring in competition, and maybe they will. But I do think that right now the market is overestimating the danger of that. Another example right now, Najee Harris down in round 11 in startups, RB28. I think there's a way higher chance than the market does that Harris goes and just signs with a starting job and has command of a backfield at least going into the draft after free agency runs. I think he's just kind of clearly the best free agent running back on the market right now. I think NFL circles have higher regards for Najee Harris than maybe fantasy circles do. I think that's also currently creating a bigger discount on Najee Harris based on the information gap than maybe there should be. So those are some ways that you can attack buying running backs in February, in ways it could make sense to. But I will just caution that this is kind of analogous to day trading, right? It's not so much I super believe in Najee Harris like as an asset fundamentally, that he's an amazing player and that he's going to be incredibly productive. I just think the market is wrong about something that's going to happen in the near future that will affect his value. And maybe after that kind of realizes, maybe then I'm looking to move on. And I understand that not every dynasty manager either A, wants to be that active, or B, has a league that's going to facilitate that level of activity to where it's even worth your time trying to do that in February, right? So I think it makes sense to be buying running backs in February. 1, if you're identifying situations like that. 2, if your league will facilitate you to be able to do that. And 3, I think it's important that you have a high value team if you're going to be taking these types of risks, right?
Yes.
If you're just like scratching at the bottom of a rebuild right now and you don't have a lot of value to throw around on your team, you don't want, like, does Najee Harris sign with a good situation to be the thing that makes or breaks your rebuild? Absolutely not, right? If you have a high value team and you're like, okay, we can play around a little bit with like a second round pick here, a flex play here. I'm just kind of taking shots on bets that will asymmetrically help me contend this coming year. That's great. Absolutely do it. But yeah, I think just important to understand that it's a very like specific and dangerous game that only makes sense if certain things are true about your league and your team.
Right. And I love that you hit on the high value portion of that, because I feel like a lot of people are just inexplicably saying pay any second for X player. Like, no matter, there's never any context to that. And it's important to have context. Like when people in our Discord, which you can join at FantasyPoints.com, ask us, my first question is often, what's the team like? Like what are we looking at? If you're just telling me, if somebody just asks, should I move, like, same thing. John Atlas says Najee versus a random projected second round rookie running back in this class. I'm going to go, what's your team like? Because if you move that too, can you afford Najee not signing? Can you afford him getting hurt? Can you afford not having the liquid asset afterwards? It can be really tough for your teams. And I know there's one man on this panel specifically that lives, breathes with 10 points per game from his RB2 spot. And a lot of people are afraid of 10 points per game, Buck. But you've always said, you give me 10 points per game for my RB spot, I'm winning championships because it's an underrated spot. So I love what Ryan said about the market mattering, finding the right buys at the right costs. How I know you're already have second round picks burning a hole in your pocket. I've seen you comment in leagues about it already. How are you handling buying running backs in a market like this when it can be so tough?
Well, the short answer is, should you buy running backs now? The short answer is no. The long answer is, well, like, it depends. If you want to buy running backs right now, you should be buying running backs in 3 different ways. One, you buy the top 5 running backs, even like the JT, Brees, maybe not Saquon, Bucky Irving. Buy those guys at high price because we know that they're going to hold. They're going to be first-round redraft picks in a year, and they're going to hold value. So if you want to buy running backs, buy them. If you want to buy dumpster dive, like how I like to dumpster dive with the 4th round running backs, you want to go buy Sincere McCormick and Audric Estime at like there were times in past off seasons where we would overrate guys like Audric Estime because we're like, oh, Javonte Williams a free agent, Jalil McLaughlin isn't good, he's a scat back, maybe Estime, maybe he's the guy and he's like worth a second, but now he's actually not. He's like a 20th round startup pick, he's free. You want to buy those guys? That's fine. There's no risk on those. I'm always doing that. Those are all players I'm always buying. The third way is, if you want to buy running backs, you should be buying them in the form of buying rookie picks to spend them on running backs. If you're buying projected volume, you want to just buy projected volume in February, I think that's a fool's errand, to be honest. Especially with middling guys like, look at a guy like Chuba Hubbard, right? If you tell me nothing happens in free agency, nothing happens in the draft, he is the RB1 workhorse for the Panthers come September, then okay, he should be worth the 109, right? But we don't know that. So if you want to be buying him, you should be buying him at a discount of, instead of the 109 what his market is, you should be buying him the 112 to the 202. If you want to buy guys like that in the middle, like the James Connors and stuff like that.
And just add a shit receiver, right? Add the 14th or 12th receiver on your roster that some Devy guy likes, right? Some wide receiver boy is going to really like him. And go and do that. I would rather add on to a later pick, right, than take the bigger role and like you said, move that 1-9. I think that's a great point. Who you're buying is as important as when you're buying.
Yeah, and if you want to buy the Najees, the Travis Etienne's, that's my wheelhouse, right? Those are the guys that I want to buy at Dynasty Data Lab price. But we're just going to be honest. You're not getting that price in a league that's already established and already done. You're just not. The Najee probably goes around the 209 in the Dynasty Data Lab probably. You're just not sending 210, 209 and getting Najee. That's not happening. So if you want to buy those running backs, they're the best to buy in the startup. Buying running backs in the startups, where is he at? Is right around the range, right?
I am looking right now.
Najee on Data Lab is right next to the 205 right now. Yeah,
so you just you're probably just not getting that. They're better off to buy in the startup. It's kind of like how quarterback used to be, right? It used to be, the cheapest time to get a quarterback is in the startup. They're never going to be cheaper than in the startup. Now that's kind of turned into running backs. People just don't want to come off these running backs, even if they have, a guy like Etienne who gets shit on all over Twitter, gets shit on in every single metric, and he's in the RB 30s. I mean, I'm in over 20 leagues. I've sent offers for Travis Etienne over 15 leagues, well above market on some of them. Some I've sent David Njoku in a tight end premium plus 27 second and a third, the 204. I haven't got a single acceptor or a single counter, and that's for a guy that people just crater and hate. So if you want to buy him, you have to buy him. You have to buy him in the startup at this point. So like I said, if you want to buy running backs, you should be buying the top 5 at, you have to be doing this if you have a good team, like Ryan said. Don't go send 2 firsts for, Breece Hall or 2 firsts for Bucky Irving when your team's not good or you're not sure. I would say the biggest danger right now is buying projectable volume. So guys like Ramondre, guys like James Conner's probably safe. He's 30 years old. He's in a whole different bucket. Like those are players I want to send seconds for sure. He's in a different bucket, but like I would say, I want to say Javonte, but he's hella dead. Chuba, Ramondre, even some like Tony Pollard, like those guys.
Yes.
Probably good startup buys. Like Tony Pollard, I've seen in startups I'm in go, past the 12th round. He went in the 11th, and the one we're in.
I tried. He got taken right before me. I was so mad.
Yeah, I had the pick there. I picked James Conner out of like that little like sea of running backs there. I don't think those should be guys that you should be buying. Like you should not be buying those guys. Those are in-season buys, right? Because if Tony Pollard escapes the offseason and he goes back to his role that decreased at the end of the season when Tyjae Spears was completely healthy, and they found something in Tyjae Spears in the passing game. Callahan's still there. The offense should be better because Will Levis won't be operating it. If we get into week 1 with Tony Pollard in that same role, like he's not going to be worth more in September than he is now. Maybe he'll be harder to get off of a team, but there's no upside in spending, like 204 or like 2 seconds to get Tony Pollard. There's no upside in that. I've sent a 26 second for Tony Pollard in the league already because like I'm sick and like he's my everyone, and I like that. But for normal leagues and for normal people, I would say stay away from buying production, because if you're only buying production, you're not buying talent, you're only buying volume. And the best thing to say about a player is volume. Then that's probably that's where people get lost. And that's where people get in trouble.
That's where you get Zach Moss on your roster, right? That's where you get Atlanta Falcons Mike Davis, right? Like we run into this. We ran an ad back with Full Tilt where we did a infomercial about why buying projected volume affects tens of players every year, and it does. It really does. That bug's hard to squash. I think you're right. And we have a comment here. It says, wow, 109. My league would even pay 209 for Hubbard, even if he was confirmed week 1 starter. Then, Jacob, that means you should be going and buying all these running backs then.
Yeah.
Because Chuba Hubbard's getting drafted beside the 108. Like he's RB 15 right now this month, just in February alone. So that means your league is telling you to please come and buy our running backs. You will have more titles at the end of the day. If like that means you're Jalen Warren, so I took in the late 11th round. Like I think he has a role. Maybe he scores 9 to 11 points per game. My RB2 spot, perfect. We love 11 points per game in our RB2 spot. Everyone pictures their rosters being juggernauts, and I need, Jahmyr Gibbs and Devon Achane. I can tell you, I built the league bond running backs, and I got dog walked by a team of wide receivers and one good running back this year. So it's just as fickle a position.
And the last thing I'll say that pertains to that, and I was talking to someone in the DMs today about this is, man, it's February. It's February 11th. Like, we don't need to worry about filling a lineup or setting a lineup.
Yes.
We don't have to set a lineup until September. We have 6 months to worry about a lineup. Don't worry, especially with your RB2 spot or RBs in general. Don't worry about that right now. Don't worry about you need a flex or you don't have a tight end. You have no needs in February, so don't worry about that. You have a lot of time to fix it. You have a lot of time to get players that will pop up on waiver wire after rookie draft, or players in your rookie draft, or random players that just are waiver wires throughout the season, like a guy like Jonnu Smith, who I picked up every single waiver wire in the offseason, and I dropped him like half of them. That happens at running back too. Kyron Williams 2 years ago. It's going to happen. Don't worry about that right now, and definitely don't be going like sending seconds for no upside players like a Najee or a Pollard just to fill a spot. That's what I think, especially with this much time left in the offseason. I mean, we did start at the offseason. It's February.
We literally just started. Don't buy to buy. Buy because the price tells you to. Check in. That's probably the best advice I can give for buying running backs is don't buy to just buy. Buy because the price is making it so you can ignore it. You should be checking in on all these bums. Check in on them. Poke around. See what's up. See if you can see if you can get that discount on a running back if somebody really likes a prospect early. And it's early to really flag plant on prospects. I don't care who you are. It's early. We don't know shit about anything. Relax. So find those guys that
Exactly.
want a flag plant and take those picks and are willing to give you that discount price, right? We used to call it the Samaje P line, right? Wide receivers we would trade away to get that like barely 8 points a game. We're gonna have to find a new player because P Ryan's dead now, but you don't even need to move just picks. There's some shitty wide receiver that somebody really loves. Someone in your league really loves some wide receiver 5 enough to like tack on a 3 and give up a running back right now. Someone out there is willing to give that gift to you. So be creative.
And that goes into like the ETN thing. Like I've talked about wanting to buy ETN so much and how he's like my favorite buy, what his price was supposed to be of the offseason. I'm buying the price more than I'm buying the player.
Yeah.
I want him I want him at the price. I'm buying at his price. I want him at RB31 because I think he is a talented player that ran into some stuff last year. He should never be this cheap. And if I can get him, I'm at RB31. Like if he stays healthy, he's going to outproduce that. I'm buying the price more than I'm buying the player. I'm not buying him to fill a spot. I'm buying him at the price because who knows? In September, I know he's going to jump up past that, and I could sell him again. So I'm buying the price more than I'm buying the player.
Yes, I love that. I love that. That is the best way we could say it. With that being said, I think we're going to take our first break. We're going to roll this into the next bit because we're talking about when you should buy and how you should do it. But there's another side of this with how the internet treats running backs like an orphan child. Sit tight. We'll be right back. Okay, with it being a conversation about, how do we buy, when do we buy, the next real big question the Dynasty community is always asking is, should we just sell all our running backs? You don't want to hold. I hear all the time, you don't want to be holding on to running backs, especially this year. And Ryan, the podcast that's dropping on Friday, you have a great piece about running backs and how they drop off and what we can expect after a year like this and this incoming class and how much lifting it has to do with the 2017 class potentially starting to phase out and the last couple classes being actual ass, right? This is a big year for the don't hold a single running back crowd. Oh, there's only 2 running backs on the board that I want to hold, Bijan and Gibbs. Everyone else is injury prone or too old or the rookies. Does that mean are all running backs to sell? And how do you know when it is time?
Yeah. So running backs, I'm going to start by talking from just a very general, like almost redraft perspective. And then I'm going to translate this to Dynasty. So if you're picking a running back in redraft, you are making just a calculated bet that is increasing your risk, but also increasing your upside, right? The running back position in pretty much any fantasy football format is just all about risk tolerance. I laid this out in my key takeaways article, again, linked in the description for more detail, but you can go back and just look at the numbers for this. Every running back you draft is going to decrease your median projection, your median expectation, but it's going to increase your upside, your potential for your team to absolutely smash or for that player to absolutely smash, right? And in Dynasty, this kind of risk-reward trade-off is really compounded because there's even more risk to a running back in Dynasty than in redraft, right? They have the shortest careers of any position. They can just completely crash in value much faster. Running backs are more situation sensitive than any other position because a running back situation can literally be either he's starting and he's scoring fantasy points or, oh, he's the RB2 and he's not on the field and he's not scoring fantasy points, right? And that is much less connected to his talent, or like with a wide receiver, you have the ability to earn targets. There's 3 of them on the field. The good ones will probably win out. Not always the case with running back, right? You can have a rookie come in or a rookie come into an RB2 situation, right? Behind an incumbent starter. And we never get to see them score fantasy points. That happened a couple of times with this last year's rookie class, right? So you should always be viewing a running back on your Dynasty roster as this is a risk I'm taking. but the risk is paying some dividends, some reward, hopefully, in the season when they're scoring fantasy points, because running backs generally are better at scoring a ton of fantasy points over any other position, right? So that should just always be the thing you're balancing. Can my team take on a lot of risk right now? Again, if you're rebuilding, there's very little reason for your team to take on any sort of risk for a short-term reward, for a in this same season reward, right? You shouldn't care about your 2025 projection if you know that you're rebuilding right now. Don't take on the risk at all. But if you're a team that is trying to move from I'm a rebuilder to I'm a contender, then yes, then you do probably have to take risks at some point. As Buck has talked about, I think probably the best way to do that is generally buying like that top 5 tier of running back. Right now, I'm just buying Devon Achane. That's kind of the easy way out for me right now in this dilemma. But yeah, I guess the last thing I want to say is when you're considering this is that also there are a lot of leagues like the ones that we play in that are just full of wide receiver bros, and everyone is just hyper aware of all of the risk of a running back, right? And at some point, like someone in the chat mentioned earlier, I can't get the 209 for Chuba Hubbard. Yeah, that at that point, that risk is just thoroughly being priced out, right? It's like, okay, everyone recognizes this. You may as well do it at that point because you're not having to pay nearly enough. All of that production's being discounted because of the risk that everyone is so afraid of. But I think in most people's leagues, that's not the case. And also just because, we have to make content, we have to be on the show and hopefully talk about everybody's leagues. Any time on this show, I'm saying like running back X is a sell, I'm just going to try to do it in terms of in comparison to other running backs.
Yes.
So James Cook right now is probably my favorite example. I think is super easy to tear down to someone like a Ken Walker who's going a round and a half later in startups. And you may not actually get that deal done in a league. I fully understand that doesn't always translate over perfectly. But based on the trades we see in leagues, where they're ranked in startups, yeah, I think James Cook is a sell like within the context of a running back. But yeah, I think it's important not to lose sight, because really that's what the question is asking is running backs as an asset class. Are they all sells? Yes. If your team shouldn't be taking any risk, if you're not going to benefit from the reward, then yes, they're all sells.
I like that. I like to say the same thing. All players are buys and all players are sells all the time. You have to be completely fluid, and that can really confuse people. That can really twist some things, but I truly mean that. I like what you said. How do you know when it's time? Your team is going to dictate when it's time. Did you finish 5th, but were 8th in max points 4? Great. Get rid of the running back on your roster. It's time to retool, buddy. Right? Did you come in 2nd, but were somehow 11th in max points 4? Do you need to gain assets? It's time to move those running. Are you 3rd, but you were 1st in max points 4, and you have the opportunity to pick up a Chuba Hubbard for 112? Yeah. Right? Like you can do these things. Did you pick up 111? Right? If you finish 2nd, you have 111, and someone's out there floating a James Cook or a Ken Walker, and you can get a little snack on top because you told them, well, this is kind of where they're going right now in ADP. Let's add a snack. There are ways to do it. That's how your team is going to dictate more often than not if it's time to sell the running backs. A lot of people are like, well, Saquon Barkley is a definite hold. Not necessarily. What if you won your title and the rest of your team is falling apart? You could be sitting there with a Derek Carr as your QB2, or maybe you rolled out like a Rodgers, I don't know, Kyler combo like some of us did and this year, and had to start Huntley, and then all of a sudden you've got this workhorse running back because all you have is some like 28-year-old wide receivers and you don't know how you made it. I'm looking to move that elite asset now. You've got your title. You won. Great. Reset now. Right? Like it can be it's not cut and dry like this player X is a for sure hold. But again, your team, and then secondly, before I pass this off to Buck, your league will tell you. Right? Like we talked about, this is why we always say not in my league, right? Like if you find yourself saying not in my league for every point, then this podcast, it's probably not for you. Because your league is ascended to a level in which that we will never be able to comprehend. And for that, I tip my cap. But in a general manner, your league is going to tell you who's actually a sell. If you get an offer for a player and you're like, if you have to risk breaking your phone for hitting accept too far, then your league just told you, or too fast, I should say, then your league just told you when it was time to sell the running back. It shouldn't be age, right? No one got more shit for the age curve stuff than Ryan did this year. And you said yourself that you're going to go back and relook at it because we have to update process and opinions and values. Age shouldn't dictate it. Situation shouldn't dictate. Again, your roster and your league will tell you when it is time to get out. Because if you just go on Twitter and all the Twitter says sell this player, because Tank Bigsby is going to take over guaranteed, and then he doesn't. If you do it that way, you're going to run into more problems than not, in my opinion. Listen to your league. Listen to your roster. Buck?
Yeah, so I think like are all running backs to sell? I think 5 years ago, or maybe even less, 3 years ago, like the answer was yes, right? Off season hit. It's February. Yes. But now there's too much information out, and players have been fantasy players in general just have too much information. They have too many things to look at, and they're way smarter than they were 3 years ago. Your average fantasy player has way more common sense than they did 3 years ago. It's just a fact. So the players that should be obvious sells that you would want to sell, Derrick Henry, Saquon, Christian McCaffrey to a lesser extent, those guys, everyone who you want to sell them to knows why you want to sell them. So it's going to be, it's going to cost, you're not going to get as much. You're going to get the second for Derrick Henry when you might as well just hold him. So what's up?
You know how many times, every time I look through the 50-some leagues and a player scores a touchdown and immediately the rebuilder, it puts him on the block with like the winky emoji face on sleeper. And we all know, bro. We know why you're selling. He's still the same dude. When you say that, it just gives me flashbacks and nightmares of every time someone scores 2 touchdowns and they put him on the block twice. They're like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Just checking. Come get him. Enough with that. It just gave me flashbacks to like week 7. Ugh.
I'm good to. I thought you were gonna say every time you go through sleeper and you look for like a shitty running back, you see him on my team.
Well, they are all on your team for sure, absolutely.
But yeah, so I would say no, they're not all sells because people know why you're selling them, and you would have if you have to sell at market, like you have to sell Derrick Henry at market, and you have to sell him for a second, then no. And that's also goes into the fact of we're gonna have teams now where it's, oh, my team sucks. I'm rebuilding. I need to sell every single player I have for every single pick I can get. And I want to shed the roster to no players. And I'll take the 211 and the 303 for Derrick Henry because he's old. My team's bad. And I'm going to have no players. And I'm just going to have all these picks in a bad class. And I'm going to be good in 3 years. That's really dumb. In general, it's just like, that's dumb. And it's also really dumb to do now because Derrick Henry and guys like that have the most value in season. So if you're one of those guys that want to sell every single player for a second and all you can get is just like a pure second, which is market value for some of these guys like we talked about, then no, they're not. But like, yeah, sort of. But if you have to sell them to where if like probably 2 years ago, and I mean to like jump around, but 2 years ago, Derrick Henry,
I was just going to bring this up.
Yeah, right, you can get a first and a second for Derrick Henry in the offseason 2 years ago, no doubt, from somebody. Now people look at you, you put Derrick Henry on the block, they'll be like, he's fat as hell, he's 30 years old. No. like no, I'm not giving you a first for him. It's just how it is. People are.
And then what's the reply? What's the reply? But he had almost 2,000 yards this year. He's the top 3 running back, bro. I need to at least get that investment back.
No, for sure.
That's the
I would say so. In that case, no, they're not sells unless you can get above market. If not, hold them till the season. They'll be starters, and you'll get something from a contender in season. I'll say the running backs I believe are the biggest sells. Like my biggest sell at running back right now, believe it or not, it's a weird one, is Zach Charbonnet. He's ranked as the RB20, right? He's the RB20, and I honestly can't figure out why he's even that. No, I just can't, because first of all, he's the backup.
He's better than Kenneth Walker. When he got the workload, he popped off. He's an RB1. He
was my GOAT. I'm not gonna lie, but he's the clear RB2, and every single time Ken Walker comes back, even off of an injury, they go right back to the ass back Zach Charbonnet Gatorade on the sideline. They go right back to that offense. But I would say with Charbonnet,
why do we have Zach Charbonnet B-roll? Why?
Because I was ready for someone to talk about Charbonnet. That's how prepared I am as a podcast producer. I knew someone was bringing him up today because we're talking running backs, and Buck can't not talk about Charbonnet.
Carbonnet. That definitely threw me off. But so with him, because I was just going through his price, I was just looking at Keep Trade Cut and Dynasty Data Lab because I drafted James Conner ahead of him in a startup, and I was like, man, like why is he ranked RB20? He's ranked RB20 like everywhere, and I couldn't figure out. And I think they're probably the most dangerous assets because the biggest market difference from 3 years ago in the NFL and just in Dynasty in general is that running back has become super neglected in the NFL by teams, and they know that. So they'll be like, yeah, sure, I'll just sign my starting running back for 2 years, 10 million. Like, who cares? Might as well. Used to be back in the day, Ken Walker hits free agency, some shit team gives him $40 million and he leaves, and then the incumbent backup becomes a starter of the Seahawks. That's dead now. Like, honestly, that's dead now. We've done this a million times where we've been trying to buy the backup that becomes the starter because he's the clear backup and he has talent and he's young, and they're going to let this guy walk in free agency. And then Charbonnet comes in at 90% of the workload. Tajay Spears is going to be the starter. Send any first for him because Derrick Henry left. Then they just go sign Tony Pollard in free agency, and then he automatically loses half his value.
Alex Madison.
Those type of Trey Benson to a lesser extent, but he was a rookie. But those type of players, they're gonna take over. Like with Charbonnet, his best argument for the reason he'd be ranked RB20 is they'll let Kenneth Walker go in a year. He's the running back in 2026. First of all, they're probably just not gonna let Kenneth Walker go because he's often injured. The team likes him a lot. The running back contracts just aren't shit anymore, so they'll just sign him for 3 years, $18 million with $12 million guaranteed, and he'll just stay. Or if they did let him go, they can also just replace Charbonnet. He wasn't even drafted by that regime. You have a whole year. We would wait a whole year until 2026 for Charbonnet to be the starter, and we need all these like things to line up for that to happen. They need to let go of Kenneth Walker. They need to he needs to go through a whole offseason, a whole draft to get to this RB20 price. So I would say he's the biggest sell right now. Guys like that. Trey Benson is more of a buy because he's fell a lot. Like I'd rather have Trey Benson than Charbonnet, and that's not how the ranks are. Because I think he at least has a better chance for that to happen. He's behind a guy who's 30 years old and always hurt, has never finished the season. So that I think those guys are definite sells right now. Guys like him.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely with you. I think there's something to be said kind of for the RB2 where Jacob and I have talked about this on the show some, where the RB2s like Charbonnet, they're not expected to do anything for them to hold value. But you're right that it kind of going back to my day trading analogy from earlier, you are day trading if you're holding a Zach Charbonnet or a Trey Benson or a Blake Corum, right? Because you're just trading off of the information rather than is this player fundamentally a good asset that I think is going to get on the field and score fantasy points, right? It's entirely speculative of will the team's decisions work out in such a way that this guy can return value. So yeah, I think yes, this is the worst time of year to hold those guys actually, because this is the time of year that things shake up the most on depth charts from from free agency to the draft. In season, if you want to hold those guys, I think that makes a lot more sense. But yeah, I am with you. And I'm not necessarily saying like that the Seahawks are going to draft Charbonnet's replacement this year. Although maybe they would. That would be a very funny day on Twitter for me. But in general, as an asset class, yeah, I agree with you that those are kind of the toughest holds right now, like where it's just purely they have value because we think that this could be their role eventually if teams make certain decisions.
I would say with him is he's just so much more expensive than other backups with the same upside. With like you can make similar bets at a lot cheaper costs. And Charbonnet does fall a little in startups, but he's like the RB20. Like he's ranked as a top 24 RB when there's Blake Corums, there's Trey Benson's, there's other like even like a Marshawn Lloyd. There's other guys. My guy is finally the year, only 22 years old. Kendre Miller, still the lead RB2.
He's never playing more than two games in a year.
Still a lead RB2 in New Orleans. New coach, Dennis Allen's gone. Young prospect, kind of a demon.
Same body. That's the problem.
I will say, if you want to make like the informational bets like that, do it on the guys that are way cheaper that have the same upside if they do get on the field. So like Isaac Rendo is one of my favorite examples currently. You can get him for like a 3rd round pick right now. He actually looked good when he was on the field. There's a decent chance that he just rolls into the season as the RB2 there. And then he's like the same asset as Zach Charbonnet essentially through the season that you get to hold. So yeah, that's where I would look instead.
All those premium backups, like we got a Jacob saying Jaleel McLaughlin, all that stuff. No, I'm good. I'm just good. Like those guys, those are the clear fades for me when Twitter, like when McLaughlin got bumped up, I took Estime. If Estime got bumped up, I'd take the next guy. Right? I kind of always lay it out like this. Anytime I need to draw a map, a roadmap for a player's success, he's got to go around the bend, through the dark caves, into the forest, come out the other side unscathed to maybe possibly get 60% of the role that we hope he gets. I'm good. I'm good. The missed tackles forced are sexy. Sure, missed tackles forced are great. The problem is if you don't get the ball enough to do it, it doesn't matter. Right? Volume is king at running. It just is what it is. You're either an elite pass catcher, your role is so good it's undeniable, or you get a ton of volume. Like that, we know this now. So these guys that could maybe hopefully Javonte got hurt, and we were like, Jalil's gonna step in, 20 points. And did nothing really. And his opportunity for no reason. Tyler Bidet got some run. We got Estime had some games and then got benched. It just none of what the running back rotations do make any sense ever. So you're right. Those are typically guys I want to get out of. Algier is still good. I think he's a good player, right? If he got to start somewhere, he would be his rookie year. He does his job. I don't think he's a good running back, but he does this thing. Not someone I'm super invested in unless he's free. Free is the name of the game with guys like that. For sure. Let's take our next break. We're going to talk about our ranks. I think we hit these two topics pretty in depth. We got a pretty short topic to come up with here before we finish this thing off with some rank disparity, some things we disagreed on in our ranks. We're going to touch on the questions that we haven't answered, as many of them as we can anyway, before we run out of time tonight. So you're going to want to stick with us. We have a lot of show left to go. Don't go anywhere. Okay, so sitting here doing the rankings, it wasn't like easy for me. This is the last rankings we're going to do before the rookies come into play here. We're going to start adding them in to that. We usually do it in middle of February, towards the end of February as we lean into March. I've gotten a lot of questions about that. So that's generally where it is. We need a little more information. That's really what it comes down to. People ask, why don't we have the ranks? Why don't we have the rookies? Because we need information. It would be, to me, irresponsible for me to put, I don't know, Hampton in there and be like, oh, I would take him right now over insert, if I'm looking, I really like him, I want him over Alvin Kamara right now. One, we don't know what his pick ADP is going to be. We have no idea. We don't have any information about him at all. And then you're just letting perennial back-end RB1 Alvin Kamara. To me, it's irresponsible. So I like to have as much information I can before I start telling people who to pick over player 1 or player 2. It's why my Dynasty tier sheet has not been fully updated yet. It's very hard without as much information as possible, because I would be lying to subscribers. I would be lying to listeners thinking that I know something that I don't. I'm very much about the board and about value and market. I don't know the market for these guys right now because there isn't one. So quick answer.
Just to jump in even further on that, I think an even bigger thing is nobody is buying or selling Omarion Hampton right now. You're buying or selling the 109. That's like that's not actually how this works. Like I know that there's like a temptation this time of year to, if you have a pick, to like envision the player like that.
Yeah,
that doesn't exist. Don't do that. It's not what's actually happening. You're fooling yourself and you're creating license for you to make bad decisions because of a player take where, as Tom said, we don't have barely any of the important information about most of these players as fantasy assets.
People that tell you they do are lying to you. They all respect to the hustle of content creating. That to me is like one of the biggest flaws in content creating, is when they say, I know, and you don't. Right? You have no idea right now, because we have what information are you telling me you have? None. So that's why I'm kind of I attack the picks more than I attack the players for ranks. That's why we wait a little longer for the ranks. I actually have a story about doing that, Ryan. I had this team. All it needed was some wide receivers. I had everything else. I had the quarterbacks. I had the running backs. I built it. It was ready to go. It was a bottom feeder for 2 years. Buck always makes fun of me for it. And I thought I had the 102 and I had the 104. And I was like, I'm getting Neighbors. I'm getting Marv. This is locked in. Like, there's no way this is going to backfire on me. Guy whose QB1 was like Tannehill took Marv 101. And I had to take Caleb. And the next guy took Neighbors. And I was like, great. He has no freaking quarterback either. Awesome. Then I got Bowers. It's like, oh no, I got Brock Bowers and I traded Caleb for Jamar Chase. Oh no, right? Woe is me. But when you start locking in a rebuild and like, I'm getting this player at this pick, you don't know shit. We don't know. You don't know what the players you're playing with are going to do. I know Genty's going to be there at 102. Should I buy it? The guy at 101 said he's taking quarterback. Is he? Because he told you in February? Yeah. Don't trust any lie.
Not only could he change his mind, he's incentivized to lie to you. Like that used to be one of my favorite things when I had more time to like mess with league mates. Is just like completely disinformation peddle about all of my intentions during a rookie draft or leading up to a rookie draft. Like I don't have the time to sit there and do that now. It's very funny. Is there an edge to it? Maybe. I will say it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I joke all the time. I'm very pro cheating, right? Like, I think teams should steal signs. I think roids should be reintroduced to baseball. I think teams should film practices, cheat, deflate footballs. I don't care. Do what you have to do. I do not care. Lie to your league mates all the time. Lie. Yeah, I think I'm taking this player here and just completely swap. Absolutely. You have to try to win, get an advantage. Lie. What are they going to do? Be that mad about it? I don't know. Got duped. Don't trust me. What can I say? Snake in the grass, if you would. Daniel says Seahawks trade Walker, move up to grab Warren, and indeed draft a running back RB2. The Seahawks didn't draft RBs round 2. Pete Carroll did. The idea that the running backs just draft running backs. No, Pete Carroll. That's his regime. That was his group. Watched for the Raiders to draft back-to-back round 2 RBs, right? That's who we should be worrying about. Your sincere McCormicks are going to die. Just telling you now.
No.
I know,
please,
Buck.
no.
I know. Your 78% rostership is going to suffer because they're going to draft 2 second-round running backs or have some Chris Carson round 6 beast. Anyway, as we get
sincere McCormick better.
accidentally went into a little aside there, which, considering there's only been one, and I haven't even talked about the MVP, I think I've done pretty good. That being said, who is the hardest player for you to rank, Ryan?
Yeah, so I would almost interpret this more as like the player I'm looking at my ranks now, and I'm like, oh, I probably wasn't fully thinking this through. So I guess that makes it hard if I feel like I made a bad decision, right? I think Isaiah Pacheco, I had him just barely still inside my top 20. I don't think there's a lot of reason for that at this point. It's definitely a hard situation to kind of parse, right? He comes into the season, or I should say, comes out of 2023 just operating as a bell cow, right? Comes into the season for the first game and a half in 2024, doing pretty much the same thing, operating as an every down bell cow, getting all the goal line work, being used in the passing game, has the injury. He comes back like really late for the Chiefs Super Bowl run, which is like generally when guys are doing that, they're nowhere near 100% physically. I would not like hold Isaiah Pacheco's tape against him from weeks 15 onward, right? I'm just assuming the guy's not healthy at all. And him splitting work relatively evenly with Wash Kareem Hunt would suggest that Pacheco is not himself. But it also brings up the question, is he ever going to be himself, right? This was a running back where his defining kind of trait and what made him work in the league was his speed. Fourth year in his career after a major lower body injury. Is he going to continue to have that? I'm not entirely sure. Also, the Chiefs offense changed significantly this year. They at some point kind of decided, and whether this was because it was Kareem Hunt that they had to hand the ball to or not, they kind of remembered, oh yeah, we have Patrick Mahomes. We can just not have a running game and we can just use the short passing game. We can do all this like funky stuff to Xavier Worthy or Mecole Hardman or whoever is available and just use the short pass game as the run game. Do they continue to do that into 2025? I would think most likely, especially as their receivers are getting healthier and they have more of a full receiver core. So I think Pacheco it's tough because there's also the world where he just walks into 2025 as if it were 2024 and he's getting a top 12 workload on one of the best offenses in the league. So there's like quite a range here of possible worlds that are literally from like he's completely cooked as a player and is just dead to like, oh, he's scoring as a fringe RB1 this year. So yeah, I think ultimately that's probably going to land him somewhere around like the Tony Pollard, Najee Harris range for me. So I'm going to get him down probably like fringe top 25-ish, which is still going to make me notably higher than anybody else here. But yeah, I think he's kind of the toughest one for me to think about and parse through.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He's definitely a tough click. Buck, who is your hardest person to rank?
Am I cheating if I kind of have three? They're different groups.
Oh God.
I'll skip one.
No. Hit him. Let's go.
No. Well, the first one was Saquon. Even though I talked about him 2 podcasts ago. He's consensus RB4. I think I have him at RB5. Just really hard to put it. I don't know. It's almost like you have to put him on merit because there's not enough players to put over him. So I don't feel good about that. I know like we talked about that extensive 2 episodes ago, so I won't go too far on that. My other 2 were first one I'll say is Joe Mixon because I put him, I think, at RB16, right? And I have him behind all the other old running backs in that range, like Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey. And almost we can make the argument that he should just be ahead of those guys because of what he did last season when he played. He had almost 100 yards every single game, averaged 20 points per game, has a contract, probably nothing probably really changes in that backfield. They do have a new OC now, which we would expect them to go at least a little more pass happy than they were before. They were one of the least pass happy teams in the league. But if we just do a projectable like point vault, like from points, there's really no reason to say outside of like merit that he wouldn't just outscore Christian McCaffrey or Derrick Henry next season if everything is considered. What's going on? Are you laughing at me?
No.
I was like, what? I was like, damn, is that no? But anyway, yeah. So I think almost he should like be over Christian McCaffrey and over Derrick Henry, but it almost like feels wrong to do it. He'll be 29 years old to start the season. And then my last one is Brian Robinson, who I think is probably in the tier of like Zach Charbonnet, where he might be at the biggest risk of a running back that has some type of value and some type of name to get absolutely nuked in the draft. I would say he has one of the bigger chances, and he's valued at like an early second, which I wouldn't pay right now. Like I think how we talked about Chuba, right? Like we need some type of leeway if we're buying a player like that. If we're buying Brian Robinson, market value early second, you should be trying to buy him at mid to late second, 206 to 210 range, because I think there's a real good chance that he gets nuked. And he's like we talked about, as our running back sells, he might be someone who you should just get off your roster before the draft, because one, I think there's a really good chance he gets replaced. Two, he's probably never getting the pass catching role in that offense, and he's doesn't have much upside. Like if it's almost like, what do you win when you win? If you lose Brian Robinson, like you lose like a fine 10-point RB2, that's it, which I need. But if you but you don't get like much like you can always get a player like him back. So you're going to lose more by keeping him on your roster than just selling him. So I would say as I cheated with Saquon, Joe Mixon, and Brian Robinson, but all for different reasons. I think they're all three different tiers of player.
I think all of those are fair. They can be really tough when you get those. I mean, Brian Robinson was still made pretty much irrelevant by Austin Eckler last year. Like when Eckler played, he was more explosive. He was more productive generally. He caught the passes. It was interesting. The same thing happened to Brian Robinson Jr. that we were dreading, is that the Russian quarterback kept rushing touchdowns in, and it nukes players like that. Yes, Russian quarterbacks are great for running back, bad for running back rushing touchdowns. Often, I'll say. Look at how many. Look, sometimes it's system. Kenny Pickett was out there vulturing 1-yard touchdowns from Saquon when Hurts was out with a concussion. So sometimes it's just the team. But you're absolutely right. It can be dangerous. For me, it was second-year running backs, all of them. We had a question in the chat. How do we feel about them? Do any we like that didn't get any run? He's like, yeah, I want to buy Marshawn Lloyd. He could just get replaced. The one though that I think is probably the safest, but I still had a hard time with him, it's Jalen Wright, just simply because he fits what Miami wants to do, obviously, which is go one direction as fast as possible. And they have their other guy now. Mostert, I don't think is going to be around again, which everyone said last year, but the dude scored an obscene amount of touchdowns this year. His body did actually break down, but maybe there's just a loyalty thing there, and they bring him back on a 1-year deal or something like that. And Jeff Wilson. So for me, it was all these second-year guys like Trey Benson. I have at 22, and I was like, man, I wouldn't click him there. So then I was like, how do I rank him there? And it's like, well, age, and then I was kind of like fighting myself on it. Benson was tough. Lloyd was tough. Jonathan Brooks is like dead. Like I have him at 20, but as soon as these rookies come in, these are the guys getting lapped by these guys. And it's tough. I'm going to change my rank because I see I have Montgomery only one spot ahead, right? I think as much as I take a dump on DeAndre Swift all the time on this podcast, I think I'd rather him over Brooks. Etienne is going to probably like Najee, Pollard. I think I had a hard time ranking these guys because I had a hard time not having content brain. But when it came to brass tacks and push came to shove, I did not click these guys at the rank that I had them at. And that's, to me, what signals they were the hardest player to rank. And that's what tells me right now that I have to go in and redo this because I was a fraud. And I call people out for being a fraud when they don't click players. I make fun of Jacob for this all the time. We had an all-time argument about Javonte Williams on this podcast live when I caught him slipping, and I'm catching myself slipping more and more on this just simply because these second-year running backs, like Ryan, you touched on earlier, are generally a smash. Breakouts, the opportunity's not there for any of them. Marshawn Lloyd's going to take the Aaron Jones role. No, he's not. Josh Jacobs is just the guy. Oh, they don't want to run one back. Yeah, they do. His name's Josh Jacobs. Oh, boy, was I wrong on that. Jalen Wright's going to find his way onto the field. He's just too fast. He's got to get behind. He's got to get through Raheem Mostert. Oh, Raheem Mostert went down? Let me introduce you to Jeff Wilson. Right? It sucks. Oh, Benson. I was talking about the nut landing spot for Benson in Arizona because Connor, no way. Guess what? New contract. Oh, and by the way, he's indestructible. He's like cockroaches or a Twinkie. The only thing left that'll survive a nuclear blast is James Conner and 18 points per game. It's just going to happen until he's not in the league, it feels like. Right? And then Brooks breaks his shit again. Right? It sucks. But then Chuba gets a new contract and he's Christian McCaffrey. Like the second year backs are the hardest. It was easy last year with Chase Brown. Easy. He was just such an easy click last year. Second year back, explosive, had legitimate opportunity, only had to beat out Zach Moss. That was just like the easiest argument for me to make, and I made it all off season. I can't find one with these year two backs. There's not one that I'm like, that's the guy. If there is one, it would be right, just simply because I don't know if they find another guy that runs 4.3 at the running back position this year that McDaniel could like, I'm going to take that guy next. I don't know, man. The second year backs, I had the hardest time ranking because I think they should all be dead. I think they're all dead. I didn't have the balls to do it, but I think I will when we get off of here and I can take another look.
Just sell them all for Rachaad White, the ultimate contingency scam in all of fantasy football and the best value at running back because he still produced as the backup, and I think it will still stay. You can probably get Rachaad White for Jalen Wright and an early third. Marshawn Lloyd's like pretty dead. I'm sure you could trade Trey Benson for Rachaad White and like a 2. So any of those is, I think moving off to Rachaad White, he's ugly now. Everyone doesn't like him because, he's terrible. Bucky's a new hotness. Still has a legitimate role. And if he goes down, I mean, that's a projectable weekly. Like if he went down before the season, if Bucky Irvin went down before the season in a redraft league, people are taking Rachaad White in the running back dead zone like round 3.
Yeah,
I agree. He's like the best contingency back right now. I think Jalen Wright, to a lesser extent too, is like a good contingency guy, but he also is, like you said, a guy who could just completely get replaced. Yeah. We probably feel really confident that Rachaad White goes into the season as definitely a clear RB2 and probably just as like the 1B. So I think he's probably, if you move off of those guys for him, I think is a good idea.
Yeah, even Corum goes into here. Well, Corum's the guy. I was the low guy on Corum. Everyone, it felt like at the site was he's taking Kyron's. No, he's not. Like these good running backs just don't have their job taken. Like they just don't. We can want them to. Oh, he's better. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. So, yeah, the second year backs were really hard on me to rank. It was almost impossible. I felt guilty because again, I ranked them and then we jumped in that startup and every time I go look at my ranks and I was like, oh, I'm not doing it. And I just clicked something. I took I think 207 before I took all the Bensons and the whatever. So there, like, how do you rank that? Like, but then I couldn't in my mind go, well, Rachaad White over Jonathan. I couldn't get there. I was up at night staring at my ceiling because I just couldn't get the thought of this out of my head. It was taxing on me emotionally and mentally, but I did it for the people and I was wrong. So I'm going to go back in and do all of that all over again for the people. I think quick break. We come back. We talk some discrepancies, answer some questions and get out of here and not make this thing 2 hours because I'm on a mission to keep these a little shorter and we've been doing pretty good on that. So sit tight. Last break. We're going to talk about some players that we think are a little all over the place and maybe a little bit out of place. Sit tight. Not going to want to miss this next bit. Okay. There are a couple of players. I know at least one for sure I have questions about, and I'm sure you guys do as well. So this is how we're going to do it. We are not going to count down our top 12s and 24s. You can go to FantasyPoints.com. All the rankings are up on there. We can post them in the Discord chat. Buck, I can get you to do that. Post all of our ranks in there if people want them. There's a couple of players that I have like questions about. Like I am the high man on Kyron Williams on the website, which I didn't see coming. I have him at RB6. I might swap him and Jonathan Taylor. I'm kind of on the fence about that one right now. But Buck, you have him at 10. Like Ryan, you have him at 7. I am hard pressed to think of 10 running backs that are either in a better role, have more leeway, and a better offense than Kyron Williams, who's also still pretty young, and they might give like a okay contract. Not a Todd Gurley-esque contract, Lord knows, but again, the same contract, right, you laid out for a guy like Barkley. I could absolutely see the Rams handing out that contract to a guy like Kyron, who is their offense anytime they run the football. So why RB10?
Yeah, so with Kyron, I don't want to, like, we keep doing the he'll get replaced thing and he doesn't. I would say it's still looming, but not just that. The Rams look like they're having a shift right now, right? Where Matthew Stafford, possible Giants quarterback,
He's going back to the Rams. He's not going anywhere. They're
letting Cooper Kupp go. We know that. There could just be a shift in the team, and they just easily can draft someone. And I don't fully believe Kyron is like a great player. I think he's really good in his role. I think he's liked. We can't forget all the injury stuff with him, but it's a running back. So, I mean, all these guys have injuries. I would say I'm probably, a little low for sure because I have a guy like Kenneth Walker over him, which is definitely not consensus. And I don't even like they're, over like a whole round apart. And I also have Jim Cook over him, which I think is probably not consensus as well. But I just think those guys are, the better talents with a better projectable offense that they're in that I can like make excuses to. I feel really confident that James Cook goes into the season next year as a starter. He showed me he could score touchdowns and he could also be good when he doesn't get that role. I know like Ryan has some issues with him, like some concerns, which I think are fair, but I don't see any reason why they don't go away from him, especially because he was their best player in the playoffs. And then Kenneth Walker, I mean, we haven't yet to see him like if he was able to hold that role without getting hurt, which is a big if game that he had last year, because when we did that midseason startup in like week 6, he was the RB3 in Dynasty and people were comfortable taking him there. If he held that role all the way, because I remember it was like, oh, he's projected, like he could be RB1 rest of the season. Like he's a projectable RB1 rest of the season with his volume and everything. And he didn't keep it because he got hurt. And then the offensive line just absolutely cratered and they just couldn't run the ball and they had to go to the JSN offense. And that was what it was. If he gets that role and he holds it, like I think he'd be a top 5 running back in Dynasty. And we can argue that Kyron Williams did hold that and he has that role. But I just worry about like not necessarily a scheme change, but I do worry about added competition with him and the injury stuff. And just with if the Rams decide to go, a different way with their team, with like the Stafford rumors and the Cup, well, not Cup rumors, seems like that's definitely happening. But with that, I definitely worry about that because I know the Rams are like they like the shiny new thing and like they can go draft like an early second round running back. They do stuff like that all the time. So I worry about that, but that would be my biggest concern. So if not, yeah, I would agree that he should be ranked higher.
See, for me, it just comes out like Ryan, you have him at 7, so you feel closer to my outlook on this than Buck does. You were talking about how every running back basically are in 1-year contract mode. And out of these guys that are in kind of 1-year contract mode, he's 24. Buck, when's his birthday?
I don't know that one, but I do know
because he's not a wide receiver.
Yeah, I don't know the running backs.
That's fair. When's Puka Nakua's birthday?
Oh, I don't know that one. Is it April?
Oh, we busted him.
I don't know.
He's not on the game tonight.
He doesn't know like the late round undrafted guys. Like that's understandable. You're not grinding those as much.
Yeah, but he's a wide receiver like 4 now in Dynasty.
No, that one's embarrassing. I should know.
I mean, like originally coming into the league, you're not like hyper paying attention to all these prospects' birthdays. Yeah.
But I mean, we're talking about a guy who like 14 touchdowns this year, and it was like a down year. Right? 1,300 yards and he missed some time. When he's on the field, they love him. And there's like 4 to 5 running backs in the NFL that get that. I think with all the fumbling and then injuries, if they wanted to replace their bell cow, they would. What did they? Yeah, we drafted Corn because we wanted to give Kyron a break. Did they? I don't know. It didn't really seem like it when push came to shove. Oh, you keep fumbling? Don't worry. You right back out there, buddy. Last year was the Darrell Henderson thing, right? It was now Darrell Henderson. They bring him back. That obviously means when Kyron comes back, Darrell's gonna take some. Guess what happened? They send him packing, and Kyron came back and was just the dog again. It's interesting to me, but I understand the hesitation with him. But Kyron is just too good at what he does, which is he's really good at everything. He's not elite at anything. We're talking about a guy that has gotten 85% and 74.1% of touches inside the 5 in back-to-back years. And he's not just like a slouch. He had a 0.21 missed tackles force in 2023, only a 0.13 in 2024, but their offensive line was pretty bad. Didn't give him a lot of room. We're talking about 21 points per game and 17 points per game at a running back position. To me, that's inside the top 10 for sure. Because you just don't get that with a lot. And let me tell you, every time I play against Kyron, I dread it because I know they're just going to give that dude 5 opportunities to score from inside the 5-yard line every game. Any game can be a 2 to 3 touchdown game for Kyron, and it's maddening. So any catches passes, to me, it just sets up nicely. So yeah, that was the big one for me that I noticed was Kyron Williams. Ryan, who stands out on the board to you as someone that you think is out of place?
Yeah, so this is a very weird one for me to be high on compared to everybody else. But apparently I'm the high guy on Travis Etienne right now.
Okay.
I have him at 21 and you guys have him at 27 and 25. But for me, he's kind of at the top of what I would just call like my projectable volume tier. So I've got him over like the Ramondre Stevensons, the Najee Harrises, the J.K. Dobbins, those types of guys where if they're a starter on a team, they have projectable volume and we know that they can like be kind of a replacement level lead back, I guess. But with ETN, maybe I'm over indexing on this a little bit, but I just really like the idea of Travis Etienne in Liam Cohn's offense. We just saw 2 running backs be productive in that same offense this past season. I don't think that Etienne at this point in his career is anywhere near the same explosiveness as somebody like a Bucky Irving, but it like can Etienne be like Rashad White pretty easily? Can he be like Rashad White before Irving took over? I also think pretty easily, and that was a productive player. So I don't know if you guys are more concerned about him just getting replaced, if you guys are bigger Tank Bigsby believers than I am, but I mean, I look at that roster and I'm like, okay, ETN is the only running back here that can kind of do everything at least like a C+ to a B- level. I'm always just going to assume that a coaching staff is going to lean toward that guy, at least initially, or that there are at least more opportunities for him to earn different roles. So yeah, I guess that's my thinking on ETN right now. And again, maybe you guys just aren't as high on the offense and the environment. You think that the cringy Duval clip was a bigger deal than I did. Yeah, I'm not sure what you guys are going to say, but I'm very curious.
To me, it's just simply he's on the 1-year, 5th-year option. He could definitely be moved. Even if he's not moved, I see a world where they draft a running back, let's say in the 2nd or 3rd round, and now you've got a 3-headed monster, demon type team. Eventually, Etienne already can't stay healthy. He's one of those players that's a risk to me of getting hurt. And when the rookie plays well, Etienne never gets his job back because they're not committed to him. He to me is a launching pad type running back where, it's like you play GoldenEye, right? In the first mission, you have to jump off the dam. You're risking that with Etienne every time, except you're just risking that the bungee cord snapping. The moment you pick him up, the moment you draft him, there's more ways for him to go south than there is for him to go north. So he is a tough click for me. However, I will say I am buying him if he's at my price. I'll buy him at my price. I don't want to buy him at your price, just simply because there's too many other guys around.
Yeah, so I actually think I made a mistake because I think I meant to rank Travis Etienne at RB 19.
That's
to be
too
honest,
high. That's too high.
So I think I would be the high guy on that. I'm interested in Etienne because I think he's a talented player that
like over Kamara. Oh, that would be over Kamara for me, and I think that's crazy.
Yeah, I think
no, that'd be over Kamara for you. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I'd rather have him over Alvin Kamara for sure.
That's insane. To me, that's insane. That's
Because
Andre Miller brain.
I'm no longer the high guy on ETN. Look at that. I'm stepping back from this now.
It's really not that. It's because I know I can buy Alvin Kamara. I could buy him later. He's 30 years old.
You can buy ETN. Anyway, go ahead.
You actually, believe it or not, you can't. You actually can't. You actually can't.
We did talk about that.
I think with ETN, he has possible 80 target upside. Not definitely good at catching those targets, but I think the upside's there. Liam Cohen in his press conference talked about how he wanted to get Brian Thomas 10 targets a game, and he wanted to get ETN 20 carries. That was the second name out of his mouth on the offense, so he's definitely believes in him. I mean, that could be coach speak, couldn't matter, but I think it does mean a little bit. We've seen Liam Cohen get a lot out of the run game. He made Rachaad White look like actually like an NFL running back. So I'm interested in ETN because I think he has one of the biggest chances to gain value. And I don't want to call him my Kenneth Walker of this year, but Kenneth Walker last year was a player I was banging the drum for. Draft him. He's way too cheap. We did this thing with Walker where he was this touted prospect, RB1 in the class of some people, early second round pick, 102, you could be drafted in the 102 in rookie draft. He falls off, goes to the 7th round, and then automatically, boom, as soon as the season starts, he's back up, 4th round pick, and now we're back here again. I think if we just want to pick a running back that has the biggest chance to add rounds and rounds of startup ADP or just value in general, it's ETN. And he could fall off, sure, but no one else has value gain chances bigger than him on the board at running back. You talk about Kamara. Yeah, Kamara is not moving. He's 30 years old. He's not gaining any value. He's in the 10th round for the rest of his career. He's done. He'll score more points, but he's not going to add any value to your roster. We're talking about February. I want potential value on my roster in February. If I'm buying a running back, I'd rather buy him in February than buy Alvin Kamara in February. Alvin Kamara is not moving from February to September. Travis Etienne could. He can get camp hype. He can get coach hype. He can go from the 8th round and redraft to the 5th round and redraft. That could all happen. It's just not really happening with Kamara.
See, I just think at some point them gaining value doesn't matter because you're not guaranteed to sell for the value gain. So at that point, you still have to look at how points get scored. So to me, there are just certain players, and Kamara is one of them, where I know what he's gonna do. He's gonna get 70 catches. He's gonna rush for 700 to 800 yards. Hopefully Taysom Hill just stays out forever and Kamara gets a few more goal line touches, but he'll get 8 to 10 total. He's going to be a back end RB1 every single year. And even though ETN might get some value gain of the 1-year contract, he may not get. To me, there's just too many. At some point, I like a little bit of production with a little bit of safety in there, which is why I think I would still just take it.
I don't disagree with that, but I think with ETN, you look a year ago, right? And we could argue it's wrong all day. You could tell me it's wrong. I'm not here to argue that part. He was the RB10 in Dynasty as a 3rd round pick, and he was the RB8 or 9 in a redraft going in the 2nd round. That was just a year ago, not even a whole calendar year ago, that people had that type of value on ETN. And I do think, you talk about the 1-year contract.
I hated it.
You talk about the 1-year contract, and for sure, we got to worry about that. But again, former 1st round pick, he has pedigree. He'll get a job. And how it is with running backs in general, like we talked about the NFL, they can just sign him back and it'd be fun. So I don't worry too much of that because I don't think ETN's, in a year, his free agency is the RB4 on the Chiefs or something. I think he'll find his way into a role it's up to him to keep it. But I think he's legitimately talented with real upside. And the guy, he's still young. He's 26. I think he just turned 26. So I just think he's like your best swing at running back once you hit that 8th and 9th round. So yeah, I have him. He'll obviously fall down with the draft, but that just goes like when you get to like RB 19 to 25, I mean, it's all kind of the same. And then you get into just like those, just like pure volume plays, Najee, Pollard. Like I want like that's not the sexy pick. That's like drafting with like a bulletproof condom on. Like, oh, I'll just take Pollard because he's just gonna score 11 points. And like, man, like I want some upside. I want ETN. I'd rather just have that. I'll take the L if I take the L. Like that's like those picks, like they're bulletproof condom running backs from 20 to 26.
Yeah,
Let's have some fun.
You'll get that upside with child support payments, Buck. That's you start thinking like that, there's gonna be mini bucks running around the backyard. That's a scary, dangerous world that we might live in. Kids will just be calling everyone fat running backs and having people question you in the Discord about it because they think you're calling everyone overweight. Can we just clarify that before we get out of here? Just because we call someone a fat running back or a fat wide receiver does not necessarily have anything to do with their weight. Fat is just like it just means they're a little thick, right? It doesn't mean they're not athletic. We're not making fun of them, but we talk about it all the time. Oh, he's a fat ass running back. We always say we want that fat ass running back. Like it's a term of endearment, really.
And it means like he's boring too. Like
yeah,
like Mike Evans is a fat ass receiver. Doesn't mean we don't want Mike Evans on our team. He's a fat ass receiver though. Like that's just like it's just a saying. Like, and I know like it just means he's boring. Like it's just what it means. It doesn't mean like there's just certain players that are just fat as hell. Cortland Sutton, a fat ass player, one of my favorite players. He's fat as hell.
He is. He is. Debo is the fat, right? Debo was a fat ass wide receiver. He was legitimately looking like me out there, and my chair is putting in overtime. I'll put it to you that way. We will release our ranks in the Discord. If people have questions about who we have ranked where, put them in the comments. We will answer them. Shout out for Sean. He knew what I was talking about. Slappers only, Odd Job. Real funny. That guy that played Odd Job in prison. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I am just looking through quick to see if there are some questions. We answered the question about picks next year. Neil said he's picking up a Dynasty team for the first time. Just wanted to watch and shout out to my hat. Appreciate you, Neil. Looking forward to having you catch these. We have one question here from Maiden's Past. Would you rather 105 and Jalen McMillan or James Cook and Zay Flowers in a 12-team Superflex? I'll start with Ryan.
Let's see. I've been hating on James Cook a lot recently. I think just off of value, I'm tempted to just say Cook and Flowers, though. Yeah, I think that's where I'm going to lean here.
Yeah, I think that's a good lean, Buck.
Yeah, that's where I'm at too. Cook and Flowers. I think with Macmillan, I think he's one of the more like fake value players we have right now.
I'm trading him.
He should be in the 10th round of startups. I've consistently seen him go in the 7th and 8th, and I can't really figure it out. It's just a straight projection, and it's at like. Again, when we do that, we can do that. It's good to do that at running back with projection wise, but wide receiver, you actually have to be good to earn volume. You don't just get put into a role and earn the volume. And I think that's what is going on with McMillan. It's like they're projecting a lot of things, maybe no Godwin, whatever, but he has to also be good. And he showed some things at the end, but he's super overvalued to me. I think Cook and Flowers for sure.
Yeah, we'll also just quickly throw in friend of the show, Theo Greminger, was tweeting out a lot today about some quotes from new Bucks OC Josh Grizzard. Really, really wants Chris Godwin back is the sounds of it, which would be best for all parties involved as far as I'm concerned, except for Jalen McMillan, unfortunately for him. So
I still think Keenan Allen, man,
would have that in mind. Yeah,
exactly. I'm selling him. I'm selling him just off of him costing me the home league because he let a DB. I won't say it, but he little broed him. A DB little broed him in the end zone in that Cowboys game, and it cost me my home league, so I'm trading him just on principle. We have, you kind of answered this already, but thoughts on Kendre Miller? Do you think the Saints draft another running back? Yes. I think they draft another running back between Jamal Williams and Kendre Miller being more brittle than me, and my knees are shot, by the way. You can only jump off of so many ladders through so many tables in front of an audience to have your knees survive. He might be more fragile than I am at my current age and weight. So not great. I think he's a great player. He's a good, I think he's one of those cheap investments we always talk about because maybe. But yeah, I think they draft a running back. New Kellen Moore, new system, new everything.
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
He also couldn't like consolidate a full workload with Kamara out. He was losing touches to a running back whose name I can't remember right now. So that's generally not a good sign either. Yeah,
I agree. Because he was the DFS darling that week, and then it just didn't hit. He just cost so many people money. And Jacob Kelly wants to know, can you touch on some lesser known RB stats that can indicate signal for breakouts in the following season? Ryan, you write a lot about this, but do you have an example of one or two that we can give Jacob before we get out of here?
Jacob, I've seen you, I think, commenting about this too. Probably your best one is going to be missed tackles forced per touch, whatever variation of missed tackles forced. Kind of the problem at running back is there is no magic stat, because really the magic stat at running back is how many touches do you get. That's what it ultimately comes down to. And that's what I do and always will write at the top of any article that I'm like breaking down a cool stat. That's what it comes down to at the running back position. Missed tackles forced or any of these other efficiency stats can tell us what might happen if a running back gets more volume. So for example, just my favorite example today for everything is Ken Walker is third in missed tackles forced per touch since he was drafted, second in missed tackles forced overall over that period on like 300 fewer touches than Derrick Henry, which is sick. I think Ken Walker is one of the better running backs in the league right now. We're kind of just always constantly talking about, well, is he going to consolidate an entire workload for the full season? Will he stay healthy for it? If he does, we know what's going to happen. It's going to be sick, and he's going to break out all over the place. So yeah, he's probably my favorite example right now. Not that he's like super under the radar, but yeah, there are no like magic bullet stats that are just going to always point to a running back breakout. For all those reasons I just outlined.
And what's funny about that is we say volume is the GOAT stat, but drafting on projected volume is the biggest misplay for running backs. So that, to me, that's just an ultimate back and forth game when you look at those two statements, because then you're left with like, well, shit. It can be hard to identify, but hopefully that helps. And there will be a lot more on the website for that. We'll talk about it more as it goes on. Late to the party here, so I have to go back and watch this entire episode. Long-time listener, first time catching you live. First time, long time. We love and appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. How are you guys feeling about Tracy, hold or move? Ryan does a phenomenal job outlining Tracy and why he thinks he could be risky and how to navigate that kind of scenario. I tend to agree with him on that one. There's a lot of ways it can go south, but right now, you can't really sell him for much. So to me, he's more of a hold than a sell. He's definitely not a buy, but it could shake out a couple of interesting ways. I think that's going to do it for this episode. We're going to get it in under an hour and a half. So shout out to us with some technical difficulties. We still hammered it out. If you want more information on our rankings, who we should be buying, like Devon Achane and some of these elite guys who I got at 311 in a startup, and I don't click running backs in the first 5 rounds. Like I make a conscious effort not to. I couldn't not click HN at 311. He's just an absolute smash pick right now. He's a good buy at his price. If you were wondering why he was on the thumbnail, yeah, we love HN on this pod. He is, yeah.
Thank
Ryan
you for not like pumping up his price beyond a place where I can responsibly tout him, guys. Like I love touting Devon Achane. The fact that I get to do it for another year is just, it's just a gift to me. So I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, that's what I felt with James Cook for a long time. But then people started to really move up and take him at the 106, and it made me sad. It says, need more 3-hour episodes. We save those for in season. The off season, we can't do 3 hours. We gotta consciously. We love and appreciate that you want 3 hours. We get that comment a lot, actually, and that's why we have 2 Dynasty shows usually every week. Sometimes we can't make the second one work, but you kind of get almost 3 hours between the Dynasty podcast content. Market report. We'll be back this week. I think we're doing wide receivers for ranks, almost kind of like how we did for this show, but it'll be just ranks. So you can look forward to that for the weekend if the 3 of us can make that work. That's going to do it for today's show. We love and appreciate all you guys. Be sure to go and subscribe. I hope you guys had a wonderful Super Bowl. I know a lot of people were celebrating the Chiefs' demise. I hated the game, by the way. It pissed me off. I started playing Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 somewhere around halftime because I knew that game was over. So I went back to like the 1200s England to like get away. I just wanted a competitive game. That thing was a blowout from the jump. It was terrible, but I can't wait for us to record this next Market Report podcast to talk about the Xavier Worthy impending value bump that shouldn't exist. Can't wait for that. That's going to be great. I know Ryan's chomping at the bit for that one. He was in my DMs for that. Fantastic. Shout out the Eagles. All the Eagles fans enjoy it. That being said, for Andy Buckler, for Ryan Heath, I'm your host, Thomas Tipple. Thank you for making Dynasty Points a thing. We would not be able to do this podcast without all of you wonderful people. None of you have asked me to join a mock draft since I mentioned it last week. Thank you. I love you. Remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose, and your best days are always spent tilting. Good night, everybody.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.